Hi, and welcome to the 2017 TiddlyWiki European Meetup. I'm Jeremy Ruston. I'm delighted to welcome Elliot Stoneham to give our first talk of the weekend. Elliot's going to talk about using TiddlyWiki with dyslexia. I'll hand straight over to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Elliot. I'm Elliot, and I'm dyslexic. So I first tell them what you're going to tell them. You've told them. Some people have difficulty reading and processing text, and I want to talk a little bit about that. Some of you may know something about it, some of you may know nothing, but I'll just hopefully skim that just enough so you know what I'm on about. Similarly, I'm going to just skim over text analysis methods just so that we're all out there. I suspect most of you in this room will know already what I'm talking about. Then I think there's an issue around privacy and cost, which I think that the TiddlyWiki community is really engaged with, what belongs to you and what's visible to others. Then the actual meat of it, how TiddlyWiki can be used both to put in information into a text analysis system for dyslexics, and also how you can get it out again and use it for both. And I'll demonstrate a prototype, but it is very much a prototype, I warn you. So, Einstein is the poster boy of dyslexics. I met someone the other day and I told them what I was doing, and he said, "Oh, so it's a system for stupid people." No, actually it's not. Actually, it's a system for people who think differently from the group. And if any of you here are left-handed from the world, and this is just another example of people who did think differently. And I particularly like this quote because many people who are dyslexic go through life thinking they're stupid when they're not. Are extremely successful. Lots of pictures of people with learning difficulties. We say colloquially dyslexia, but actually there's a range of related conditions. And the three I particularly want to draw your attention to today, which all overlap. You're going to say, these overlap. They do. Dyslexia itself, dyspraxia, which I'm particularly good at, and also attention deficit and hyperactivity. Dyslexia itself is has a range of issues with it. You probably don't appreciate some of them and do appreciate others. So memory difficulties are one of them. Motor control, how you can hold a pen or drive a car, whatever. You'll know about reading. You'll know about spelling, because that's what people think dyslexia is. What you might not know, though, is around listening. People who are dyslexic often have big difficulty hearing what somebody's saying and actually registering what it means. And a lot of that's to do with phonics. I'll try not to go into it all too much detail. Obviously, that all knocks on into writing and the sort of organizational problems that people have. And you might also not appreciate that there's sort of spatial temporal thing. There's a lot of thing about the left-right brain, the communication between the two sides of the brain that relate to this set of conditions. As you can tell, I'm not going into this in detail. So dyspraxia is related, but much more around organizational. You organize things for people, and this is where TiddlyWiki is particularly helpful. Physically, it manifests itself as problems with gross motor coordination. We often ask, my wife's a specialist in this area, when you meet an adult and you're talking about what their problems might be, you often ask, how many times did you have to take your driving test before you passed? Did you ever play ball games at school? These are all related issues. It relates to handwriting. You've got awful handwriting. If you're a doctor, you might well have dyspraxia. But there's also issues related to how easy you find to concentrate. And hyperfocus is a particular thing. So lots of programmers have this issue, and they tend to hyperfocus on a particular area. Yes, you'll notice that my speech can be a little immature, and I get words muddled up, and I'm saying that's because of this. In the classroom, classically for people in my situation, someone writes on the board and everybody else has written down what the teacher has written, and then the teacher's wiping it off and I haven't got past the second sentence. So it's a limiting condition in terms of education. And finally, just a little bit about attention deficit hyperactivity, ADHD, hyperactivity disorder. Again, this relates to organisation. People with this in this situation have a lot of problems with organising things. They need things visually, and they tend to be moving a lot. So you'll often see them fiddling with things. They actually need to fiddle with things to concentrate. If you know a lot of salespeople, you'll find a lot of salespeople are in this category. A lot of performers are in this category. They find sustained concentration quite difficult. Often they don't appear to be paying attention. Their minds, they can be absent. They can be physically present but absent. Okay, so why the heck? This is all very academic. Why should this matter to you? One man who embodies why this should matter to you. The gentleman has one or more of the above conditions. I can't tell you exactly, but he certainly needs things presented to him very succinctly in a way he can understand. Indeed, he needs his name to appear in them, but I don't think that relates to these conditions. So what I'm saying is this is a live problem that the world needs solutions for. So how can you get a set of text and try and make some sense of it? This is a copy of somebody else's set of slides, as all of these are a copy of somebody else's set of slides. I just want to go through the sort of things that are there. First of all, I'm only going to show this in English, but it works in many different languages. The only language, I'm a Chinese speaker, I really like Chinese, doesn't work so well in Chinese now, bit of a shame. Everything else you can get something sensible out in. Sentiment analysis. Often you want to look at a text and see whether it's positive or negative. That's quite useful, as we'll see, and that's something that's helpful, particularly for dyslexic. Text summarization is very important. People who have difficulty reading don't want to read all of it, they just want to read the important bits. So how do you find out where the important bits are? And then how do you show what the important bits are to the reader? Text classification, I'm not using that in this demonstration, but that is also, I spoke about the organizational difficulties that people with specific learning difficulties often have. So taking a set of text and actually organizing it for people. In this example, they're doing it with IPTC news codes to actually classify it. That's important, that's going to be helpful. Amount of documents at it and get it to work out something sensible. Now, entity extraction, I use a great deal. So taking a set of text and saying, what's in it? What are the entities within this? And that's the core of what I'm interested in doing. And secondly, to get some link into Wikipedia or wherever. In fact, you'll see the Google knowledge base used here, and also DBpedia. Any questions? Sorry, I've gone through all of that quite quickly. Any questions so far?
No, am I right in understanding that all of those things, those techniques that we ran through, those are all kind of off-the-shelf techniques?
Oh, absolutely.
Those are established techniques.
Right? Yeah. In fact, I'll come on to that now. So let's talk about privacy and cost. So you can either do it in the cloud or you can do it locally. And if you do it locally, you can either do it like on your server locally, if you're in a corporation or a school or something, or you can do it actually on your machine. We'll come on to JavaScript and so on as well. If you do it in the cloud, there's a absolutely mind-boggling set of suppliers out there, and there are new ones popping up all the time. So it's a very, very busy field. The problem I can see, though, is a law firm. They do big international law deals. The idea that you would send some of their text of what they're dealing with out to some external agency is completely beyond the pale. And that's true of many different organizations. And plus the transit problems. But it's very flexible. You can pay per use, so it's quite handy in terms of keeping the costs down. There are open source systems out there, but generally you've got to pay for running them on a server. So you've got the server cost as well. Sorry. If you do it locally, more locally, either on your own computer or on a server, it cuts down your options. More complex to set up, but the text is private, depending on how obsessive you want to be about whether other people on your network can see it and so on. But you've then got that cost that you've got to carry the whole time. Scale of things, if you use the DBpedia server to do text analysis, you need a 4 gigabyte memory, let alone the rest of it to actually do the analysis. So there are some JavaScript systems out there, because I anticipated you might ask me this. But the JavaScript systems are difficult to run in the browser. There is a system that runs in the browser, which I'll talk about later if you're interested. But it's quite, in terms of the results it produces, the results are not great because it hasn't got enough data basically to work off. I'm also very interested in WebAssembly, and I think, which we haven't spoken about at all yet, but when WebAssembly becomes available in a bigger way, I think it will change everything. And I think it's something that TiddlyWiki should be thinking about, something we should perhaps be talking about later in the session. So moving on to how this all fits with TiddlyWiki itself. You can use TiddlyWiki just to provide the input to the system. So run the Node.js server as usual, or I mean, I know nothing about it. Tiddler's stored in the file system. I've got a file watcher that watches the file system and creates the analysis and just shows the analysis as a set of web pages, HTML pages.
So can I just make sure I understand what's saying here, that we're running TiddlyWiki under Node.js. I edit the tiddlers. You've got a daemon running on the server that sees the tiddlers change and automatically keeps up to date a set of HTML reports based on those tiddlers, and that's happening in real time.
And that's happening in real time.
So if a guy can literally change a tiddler and then refresh the HTML page, and awesome.
Okay. Okay. Well, there's a bit more than that. Beyond that, I've got a server written in Go, which we've discussed. It's a modification of that. So the Go system itself, on the Go server, you can save the tiddlers, and the analysis all appears as pseudo tiddlers. So you can see, if there's a particular entity, you can see the entity as a pseudo tiddler, which again, I'll show you. Why does one want to do this? I've got 3 things really. First of all, I think you need, for people who don't have, it's perhaps hard to know what are. So I'm particularly interested in helping communicators and teachers perhaps to work out which bits of text are actually complicated and need looking at. In fact, well, I'll come on to that in a minute. Secondly, for those who are reading text, solution here. I'm sort of halfway down finding the solution, but I want to help people looking at text to actually be able to get more meaning from it, or at least see where to look just by scanning it. And then obviously one's interested in how to put a set of text together and get meaning from the set of texts. Okay. Come back to me. Okay, so here's my Node.js.
So you are projecting your slides, but not
Screen.
not your screen.
I'm not projecting my screen, aren't I?
Oh yeah, you're not the screen share. But now it's come back.
And I'm like, Jeremy, somebody's doing this.
Go there, brilliant.
Okay, are we safe now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
Okay, so I want to show a number of different things. I wanted to show something that was current, which is why I've got the election results on here. I wanted to show that's one here's one I made earlier when I was just beginning to do the slides. And then I also wanted to show different types, just to show that we can, I mean, I may not actually show this to you, but just to show that we can get TiddlyWiki 5, classic text and HTML. It'll also do Markdown. So, I mean, it's just the text of the BBC News. It's not.
Okay.
Yeah. Nothing of interest. So here's generated from that are what the analysis system is producing. So I can show you the relationships between all of the various tiddlers just by doing that, which, not surprisingly, they're all linked by the by being referenced by the one thing. And there are some overlaps. So, for example, you've got the death of Roy Barraclough, who's a British entertainer, is actually linked to the death of Desmond Carrington, who's a BBC Radio 2 presenter, because they're both in the media, they're both related via the BBC and so on, just to get you a sense of it. Sorry?
And how is this relation reflected in the TiddlyWiki? Because that is where the relation is, right?
It's because they probably both contain the word BBC, for example, or ITV. Or
Okay, not necessarily a tag.
No, not a tag. No, just because it's done the textual analysis to work out what the entities are in the text.
And so the links are something like the same entities are found in the documents.
Yes, and the closeness of the documents relate to how many links there are. So you can see that. Well, for example, I've got one in here that's Trump's name must appear in as many things as possible, but that's only actually linked to Theresa May's failed gamble for the election, because it's not related to all the rest of it. Yeah.
So could you now switch back to the Node.js window and drag in a new tiddler or create a tiddler with, TiddlyWiki's front page text in or something?
Yes, I can try. A live demonstration may or may not work. Okay.
Well, I think it's so fascinating because you're demonstrating a really interesting technique as well as the technique of having a daemon running on the server.
So what you can do actually is to take the tiddler itself and drag it into your.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know enough. Let's. Tiddly. So let's just pop that in, and there'll be a short pause while it digests it.
Wow.
Okay, so if we go and look, we can now go and look at the graph of TiddlyWiki, which I've no idea what's going to be. Information, not over exciting.
Yeah.
We can go and see. So it's found three things. four things there. So it thinks.
So what do those links link to? To those concepts of everything information.
Yeah. So if we go to everything, well, so let me just tell you a little bit. This isn't what I planned. So what it's doing, it's showing two highlighted sentences there. Those two highlighted sentences are the ones it thinks are the most germane. So if you're going to read any part of this tiddler, it's the highlighted bits you should read. So if you want to just skip read it, basically, that's the bit you go after.
So I mean, that would be a great TiddlyWiki feature.
I guess it would. So which one would you like me to follow?
Everything.
Okay.
See everything.
Okay, so everything. So there's the concept everything. Yeah.
So what, if it's all right to ask, what made it single out everything, that particular word? Like what?
Because everything is it's a noun actually, and it's a noun that's shared. So it uses nouns to, in fact, a common noun rather than a proper noun. It prefers proper nouns, but so capitalised proper nouns would be what it's most.
If Oxford had been in there, it would have, yeah.
Yes, Oxford probably is there somewhere, and then each of these will be a list. So this is a proper name. Rover's Return Inn is a proper name of a place, and you see it links to a number of other things, and it appears elsewhere. You'll see it's not only it's actually in the Rover's Return. It's in DBpedia.
This is all on the TiddlyWiki's input.
Yeah. This is just from.
You could run this system called whatever it's called. It just reads TiddlyWiki, but it could also read anything.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. No, it's intended as a sort of general.
There's nothing special here about TiddlyWiki.
Not so far. There will be a little later on.
Amazing.
And so information. So. Yeah.
It would be nice if they linked back to the Tiddler.
Yeah, we'll come on. Yeah, we'll come on to that. I haven't got it linking back to the Tiddlers, but nearly. So,
That's the graph.
yeah, so that's the graph of the. If we go to something a bit more, let's do Robert Peston's graph. So Robert Peston's the same. We've got here's Robert Peston's Facebook post. And you'll see that we've picked up some, as well as highlighting some sentences, we've also picked up some pictures of things. And so if I mouse over the picture, someone's going to talk about CSS. This isn't, I'm sure it can be better, but I was quite pleased.
What's the picture for Brexit?
Oh, Brexit's lovely. Yes. There we are. These are out of the Google knowledge base, so I don't take any,
What is this? You just drag this in as a Tiddler?
Yeah, I just create. So it's just all I've done is created it. It's just in here. That's all it is. That's all I did.
Okay.
But
I
the
just
Tiddler
copied.
working out in the other window is a Tiddler that was created by the server-side daemon.
Yes, yeah. So the server-side daemon has created this.
So that's output generated by the server from there is also in here the raw Robert Peston Facebook post Tiddler.
So this
Yeah.
is generated by and then over.
Yeah. So sorry, I've jumped ahead. So this is the Go server part of it.
Yeah.
If I just go, I've created
And
a.
that's live.
Yeah.
That's running on.
Yeah. Yeah. So and in the Node.js version, we didn't have Trump. So I actually put Trump is actually here on the server version, just to prove you can put some material on the server version. And if we go and so we can go and see what the Trump thing is. Lots of stuff about Trump.
So is this Tiddler itself does not exist in the original? This is
No. So I've created this. So if I go and if I go and find it just to show you, there's a Tiddler on here, which is just the raw Tiddler, Trump tag on it. So this is inside the Go server rather than inside the JavaScript server. Is this nice and confusing? So the Java.
So yes, this is a different URL than the first.
Yeah,
tab.
this is a different. Yeah, so the first tab is it's a different URL. Sorry, I haven't made that clear. Forgive me. So we've got the actual 8888, and then we've got if I create a new. So that's back to being the, as it were, output. And then as well, at 8088, I've also got a TiddlyWiki server as well running. And so I can see that same stuff inside the TiddlyWiki server. And inside the TiddlyWiki server, I've also created this new tiddler that's only inside the TiddlyWiki server and not inside the Node.js one.
You manually created that tiddler. The one that was there a second ago.
Yeah?
Yeah.
The original one, yeah. That was the original text.
Yeah, so I manually created that. And then the system created the this thing called equals TID equals. I don't say anything else. So it's created this. So there's a whole set of tiddlers that are created on the fly in the Go version. And you can see, if I go and look at Trump, there is the tiddler version of Trump, and that's created on the fly, including the sentences where he's mentioned how that all interrelates. Now, these are, if I can just talk briefly about, so obviously you can dance around between these. Palestinian, no, don't do that, Elliot.
How many tiddlers are in this wiki?
How would I find out?
Go to control panel, just click that one.
There?
And then info tab on the left. And scroll down. And there's 264 tiddlers. Excellent.
The other thing I want to show you is around what I want. I'll go back to the sort of root. The other thing I want to show you is around working out what you should be changing. So here's about Radio 2, which is something the BBC have put together. Which is nice because it's got lots of pictures of Radio 2 presenters in there. What I'd like to know, though, is how could they have improved that? What would they do? Oh, for pity's sake. To improve that that piece of writing. So I've got review here. Now, what review does is it looks at a number of different, so it takes individual sentences and it works out their centrality to the story, which I'm mapping up here, and how positive they are. Now, clearly, you will be able to see that, and then also how the colours is showing you what the difficulty is, how difficult they are to read. And I'm not saying I've got these graphs right. I'm just some objective measure on these sentences. It's the same thing per sentence down the bottom here. So what we're saying is that in red here we've got how difficult is it to read, and this is actually the most difficult sentence to read. It's too long. It's very long. The words are long. And this relates to how long the sentence is, how many words there are, how long individual words are, all that sort of stuff. It's a standard technique. How positive is it? So, is it positive or negative? Because generally things are easier to read if they're positive. And how central is the story? You want the things that are central to be easier to read. And then it comes up with a composite score. So if you were to change this text to improve it, the system is recommending that you change this particular sentence. And in a larger text, it would recommend around 10% of the sentences.
So can you change that?
No, I can't. I can't do it here. But eventually, one would like to see the two things side by side. Yeah, that's my hope, that you can be editing and it comes up and says, really, this sentence doesn't look right.
But you have that tiddler, so you could go and edit.
Yeah. So if you have the tiddler and the analysis next to one another.
But you could go edit the sentence now and see if we can make it better.
Yeah, I guess you could. I'm not going to attempt it, but I guess you could. It would just go through the same process. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that all should let you do it, shouldn't it? Well, let's go. Okay, let's go and try. Where was it? Radio 2? About Radio 2. There we go. Okay, which one's the one we didn't like? It's with a repertoire consisting of only 20 years. Okay. So let's edit that. I should have put some breaks in, shouldn't I? Okay, now if I was an editor, I'd say there shouldn't be a dash there. There should be a full stop and a capital letter. As you often say to children, full stop, capital letter. Yeah. Okay, so let's just make that change.
So is that something the system reacted on, like mistakes like that?
Yes.
You got the sentence, so it was rough.
So it said it's a bit long. It was, in its measures, it doesn't look right. And I made one simple change. So let's go and see if we wiki to get that, or will it do it as we go? Might do it as we go. Yeah, how do I force a refresh with the server? Answers on a postcard, please.
Reload the page.
Reload the page. Okay. There you.
And you can do the recent. Did you say?
Okay. So yeah. Okay.
So now it just doesn't like that big list.
Yeah. So now it doesn't like the big list. Yeah. So it's changed it, but it doesn't like the big list. I mean, it's always going to, it's always going to not like something. It's trained to not like something.
That's pretty
Awesome.
awesome. Yeah.
So do you think it feels like there's two aspects of TiddlyWiki being touched on here? One is as a way to explore this complex intertwinkled set of results.
Yes.
And the other is potentially as an authoring environment in which one can gain this advice and use the refactoring facilities within TiddlyWiki to sort of dynamically simplify the text.
Exactly.
And was it both of those that occurred to you when you started poking around with TiddlyWiki?
Yes, I've always been interested in both aspects.
Yeah.
I think they're two sides of the same. As an educator, there's two sides of the same coin. Or as a publisher,
To explore the second part, what you might have done was explored integrating all of these tools into Microsoft Word. I could imagine, I don't know what Microsoft Word lets extensions do, but you could imagine them all working there. But you didn't do that. You jumped here, and I guess that's.
It's because I think I'm interested in doing it in Word as well. I'm particularly interested in Google Docs, so that that's all sort of on my list of things I'd like to do. But TiddlyWiki's has the advantage of being more self-contained and more accessible. But
you always see the server side as supporting multiple clients. When you mentioned that you might do Word in the future.
Yes, I think the technology. I mean, what I'm interested in is helping people have difficulty reading.
Well, while I've interrupted you, the other thing I was fascinated by when you were talking was how I've learned to become quite conscious of the fact that there's plenty of people in the TiddlyWiki community for whom English isn't their first language.
Yes.
And so I try to write in a way that's sort of mindful of that. Weirdly, and the other guys can tell me if this is right, but I do things like I've learned that long words are sometimes quite good because they have a specific meaning, rather than colloquially using lots of short words that has a meaning that relies on some idiom that isn't necessarily transmissible. But I'm curious whether, I guess we could use these same tools for that, for trying to evolve a kind interesting.
So
Yes.
the rules for interpreting what is a good sentence and what is not, are those like, who create those rules?
Obviously, I put this together. I didn't. In terms of reading difficulty, there are a number of different measures, and I've contributed to a Go library that does many of those different measures. The one I'm particularly using is a set of measures related to reading age. One of the things I considered doing was putting reading age up, but if you are that's me. Ooh.
Awesome. So the other thing I wanted to ask you, Elliot, was you used a very interesting phrase right at the beginning about how easy it is to make dyslexic people feel stupid.
Yes.
And that chimes with something that I'm a bit obsessed with, which is the idea that software and computers makes people feel stupid.
It does.
And that's not, and as a kind of, insofar as I'm user interface designer, I think that's not the fault of the users. Interested in I guess it's the same, that what we're talking about is sort of humiliation. It's a particularly grim kind of downside. And yeah, so
yes, I mean, humiliation is important for people because if they find coping mechanisms, they survive school, but quite a lot of them don't find coping mechanisms and they drop out. You know, either drop out physically or they become mentally absent.
Yes, I can imagine. And I see it with elderly people who, I know a few who would benefit in, well, plenty of them have iPads and they're quite sort of online, but there's a few that don't. And I think that it's that's holding them back, that
Yes.
they've had a lifetime of being, computers have for 20 years just made them feel rubbish about themselves. Thank you, sorry to interrupt.
That's right.
So you're back on the general election here.
Well, just because it's pretty, you know.
Okay, this is also, it's a better diagram because we haven't got everything being connected to everything else.
Yes, it's more interesting. It's from 2 or 3 different sources, so some of them aren't. The connections here are things appearing in the same sentence.
Okay.
Which is why some of the things that aren't connected where you might expect them to be, and it's just because in that set of text they don't appear in the same sentence.
How can we take that kind of data and push it back into the wiki?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Okay. So
But I don't know the answer to, and I've had to actually do, because this is actually in D3, I've had to take it outside of the wiki, so we're in a, not actually inside the wiki itself. Whereas if we went to a review, I can, because that is just in, I've generated it, but it's in SVGs, so I can actually put it inside. But TiddlyWiki doesn't allow JavaScript, as far as I can tell. So getting the graphic, I need graphics to do really what I'm interested in doing.
I think there's a few. I mean, one of the things I see here, which is always really cool, is that you've got things to where you wanted to get to by cutting whatever corners are necessary to accomplish the kind of
prototype.
Yeah, but it's an end-to-end prototype. I guess that's the thing that jumps out. That you've got a number of entities that you explained, and you've got connections between them. And I think now we've seen all of those connections running, and it's easy from a tech perspective to sort of imagine tighter integration.
Yes, indeed, exactly.
Not having iframes where you've got iframes. But I think that the lovely thing is that it actually, having got this far, it takes you instead to thinking about the impact of having these sorts of tools to do your textual analysis and to help you with your own writing, and the actual functional benefits of using.
Yes, and how you could perhaps have this sort of a diagram auto-generated from any TiddlyWiki. So it's just a standard thing.
Yes, I hesitate to think what terrible scores TiddlyWiki.com would get. Well, I'd probably judge the wiki text as well.
Well, it'll find 20% of them need changing, because that's how I programmed it. Whatever you do, 20% of them need changing, unless we put some absolute score in.
Awesome.
Well, thank you.
could you go back to your first wiki, which
Sure.
is your
What
that
one? Yeah.
So that functions primarily as a source.
That's in this context. It's just a source.
Where you drag and drop in there gets.
Well, the watcher will pick it up. So the daemon will pick it up and put it into the other. Put the analysis into the other. Into the other TiddlyWiki.
I mean, that system alone, I think, has anyone else been doing stuff like that, where they're dragging stuff into a TiddlyWiki and having it processed on the fly?
Well, that's
sort of what you're doing.
It is related to some of the stuff with how that works, but only in the way.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. The actual interesting part of the robot from the TiddlyWiki perspective is actually what is missing from what he is doing with the tight integration between TiddlyWiki and whatever else we're using. What I did for the robot, actually for a little preview, I guess, when I'm talking about that, is I have the robot code is very modular and kind of explicitly built or modeled after the architecture TiddlyWiki uses, with the very bare bones base thing and then plugins added onto it. And I just made TiddlyWiki be one of those plugins. And I am hoping to improve on it, because right now I threw things at it until they stuck together. And from a code perspective, it's I am shocked that it works. So, but it would be the same sort of thing that for what he is doing to make everything work together nicely, so that you have the editing right next to analysis and all of that.
But the idea in that first week, you can just, because we should show them how to drag tiddlers in and drop them in there, because that's really interesting, that it will allow you to sort of, it makes a TiddlyWiki an open-ended repository for dumping stuff in live and generating analysis of it.
And sometimes people ask whether Node.js, what is a comparative advantage between Node.js version and single HTML5 version. This is an advantage, that the Node.js version can communicate. If other processes wants to use TiddlyWiki as an input, or TiddlyWiki can be an output, this is the way to go. It's with the single HTML.
And one of the things I could have done is and one could still do, is to put the output, the generated analysis, actually into the same Node.js TiddlyWiki space. I'm ashamed to say I couldn't work out how to restart the server to get it to notice that things had changed on the disk. So that's why I didn't show that here, because I couldn't put it together. But there's no reason why not.
What you'd need to do is, instead of writing the tiddlers by putting files on the disk, instead use the API to insert the tiddler. So you can use it via HTTP, or if you've got access to the JavaScript objects, you can API. But what lots of people want that file watching stuff, I think. No? Yeah.
I wanted to add something that I think TiddlyWiki can help with, is for the user, the end user, to influence also the processing, the analysis. I'm always, when there is a system that decides entirely how to process an input, I think it will be valuable to add in this process input from the final user. For example, if I'm disabled for this thing, particularly I'm not that, I would like the system to help me on the thing that I would like to be helped for. And I think because TiddlyWiki is a read-write system, you can, while you are reading, you can also configure it in a way, the way the whole system can help you.
The rules,
the rules and the criteria of analysis. And I think it's really something that I'm very interested in thinking about that. For example, when I'm doing a tutorial, it's the reader starting by configuring what he already knows. For example, for Node.js, it's obvious. For other people, it's a nightmare. So if you want to make a tutorial that includes configuration of Node.js, for example, that's my case. That's why I'm always between explaining the whole thing, that it means explaining most TCP/IP or just ask the reader if they want to know this and that, and if they want this content to be given or not. And I think TiddlyWiki is great at that too, and maybe.
Yeah, I mean, clearly I've decided what the default, what the default settings are, and you've got to have a set of default settings that just work, so that when people first try something, it does something sensible. Being that it's back with artificial type stuff, there is a bewildering array of options you can have, and the difficulty is not with the options, but in getting the options to a point where people can actually understand them and sensibly select them. But yes, it could be made completely configurable. You say, I'm interested in this, but not in that. I mean, if you're an undertaker writing death notices, then whether a piece of text is positive or not probably isn't that interesting to you. Yeah. For example.
Yeah. Sometimes when the system decides instead of myself.
Yeah. Or you might say, I don't want to see the 20%, when we're doing the which text should I edit thing. Instead of the system deciding, you have some, say, well, I only want it highlighted if it's over a certain percentage. So then you could visually look, and you could have a central list of all the tiddlies and say which ones actually have sentences in them that probably need to be looked at. Review process.
Yeah, as you explained in the beginning, so different people can be in certain needs and in other needs, and
yes.
Having something totalitarist.
Yes, I mean the other things I haven't touched on here because they're not germane. For example, when you're looking at a particular piece of text. In this situation, if we go to what I would want is the ability to take the bold text, the important text, and read it physically. I'd like a button here where you say, read the important text to me. Yeah. Preferably with a cursor showing where I am actually physically in the text. That's the stuff I'd like. But
who defines important?
Yeah, and again, you should be able to say, well, yes, it's actually written to allow you to, which I haven't put in here, to allow you. I've said 20%, but it's written behind the scenes to allow you to say 10% or 30%, whatever it is you want. Because actually, if you've got War and Peace here, you probably don't want. If you've got an extremely long text, you probably don't want 20% of it even. You'll probably want less than that. Likewise, for a very large text, this sort of summarization stuff, you need a different summarization technique for a large text. Anyway, sorry. I get quite nerdy about this.
So the speech synthesis API that's in HTML5 is on all browsers apart from Internet Explorer.
Okay, so I should be able to do it.
So amazingly, that would be an interesting thing to integrate into TiddlyWiki. I have no idea. Well, why don't we draw this broadcast to a close? We'll obviously keep talking about this and other things. Elliot, thank you very much indeed for doing our first presentation at TiddlyWiki Meetup 2017. Many thanks.
Thank you.